Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I have for you 6 scary stories to help you sleep. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that I released a new video on my Patreon page, so if you're a patron, you can go and watch it now. And if you're not, the link to join our Patreon family is down below. Also, this drawing you see now on screen is available at my shop and also will be the gift for the month of September for my patrons. But for now, guys, grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. When I was younger, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 14. It was very difficult for me to socialize with people in person, so I turned to the internet. There, I stumbled into the world of toy-based role-play. It became my passion and even set me on the path towards becoming the artist I am today. My original interest was Dragon Age, and I joined an RP group in DeviantArt. I loved that group and spent all my time in the IRC chat, which naturally led to a decline in my grades. But I met Michael after I gained a bit of an interest in Slenderman. I had stumbled across the blog space RP world of Slender blogging and followed as many as I could, dedicated a Gmail to it and dived in, creating my own Slender blog. I played a character that was basically myself, even sharing my own name. I would even frequently post little videos of myself running through the woods, or even just talking to the camera. Michael was another player and his character was on the enemy team. You see, I played what was known as a runner, or someone who was fleeing the eldritch horror, and he was a proxy, which is a servant of Slenderman. The kicker was that he was more than just a grunt, and was basically one of Slenderman's elite soldiers. Regardless, we ended up chatting over email, but he never broke character, so I didn't either. We continued to play with each other for over a year, before I ended up breaking character to another player, who was friends with Michael as well. He, of course, immediately told Michael, "Oh my god, she's not insane," as we huddle kinda thought everyone else actually thought this stuff was real. So Michael messaged me, excitedly announcing that I wasn't insane. We quickly became pretty close personal friends, and referred to that moment as the best moment in RP history for most of the time we knew each other. We talked on an almost daily basis, and he always seemed to go out of his way to match my schedule, even though he lived 2 hours behind me, and I was a 15-year-old high school student by this point, so I was getting up at 5:30 every morning to go to school. He was pretty honest with his age, and being mature for my age, it didn't bother me that he was 19, almost 20, and I was 15. It was pretty close to the end of the year when we started talking out of character, so summer break came quickly. That just opened the door to us talking all the time. I remember one night he convinced me to stay up and video chat with him for the first time. I'd never actually seen his face before, and I was ecstatic. I hid in my closet and we talked all night. My dad busted in at 4 in the morning and confiscated my computer, which I was not allowed to have in my room at night after that point, but I just ended up giving Michael my phone number and we grew closer. Later, I told him that I didn't think he was capable of surprising me, and he responded by asking me out. Being a 15-year-old girl, I was ecstatic. My friend did well to ground me and think it through, and he'd be nothing if not a gentleman to me. So after a 45-minute walk with my friend, I called him and ecstatically told him yes. He had, during that time, sent me so many texts expressing his concern that he'd upset me. I ended up apologizing profusely for making him wait. The first few months were amazing. We were so close and talked every night on the phone, even sleeping while still in a call. I fortunately had unlimited text and call, but it got weird once the school year started back up. Over the summer, I'd been able to dedicate pretty much all of my time to him, and with school, it would limit the time we could talk to each other quite a bit. It didn't occur to me at all that talking to someone for near on 18 hours a day was an unhealthy dependency issue. So, we had our first argument about texting. He wanted me to text him whenever I wasn't able to be in call with him, but I wasn't allowed to text in class. We came to a compromise when I told him that I would text him between classes and call him at lunch. I didn't really have any friends at that school, and the ones I did have didn't share my lunch period, so it didn't affect my social life that much. It went well for a while, until I ran into an old friend from my middle school who happened to be a guy. I'd always gotten along better with guys than girls, but Michael freaked out. I had been on the phone when it happened and had brushed Michael off to talk to him. After my friend and I parted ways, I was harshly told off and told that I couldn't talk to other guys. I was completely shocked and tried to explain that the guy had been a friend of mine. Michael then had a complete breakdown and told me that his ex had cheated on him and that he couldn't trust any other guy to behave around me. He was terrified that I'd be stolen. He even cried. I was upset, but I agreed to mollify him and began to avoid my male friends whenever I was on the phone, which was a lot. Quickly, schoolwork got pretty heavy and it would take me longer and longer to call him after school. He began accusing me of not loving him enough to talk to him and claimed that he never had enough time with me. He gave me the option of texting him in class or calling him as soon as I got home from school. I went with the latter, which completely cut off any time that I spent with my family, save for a brief dinner, after which I immediately returned to my room. Things only escalated from there. I would get held after class for falling asleep because he kept me up all night, and he could explode at me for not contacting him the moment the bell was scheduled to ring. He had a written copy of my exact schedule to the minute, and any deviation would freak him out. I began pushing away all my friends as he didn't approve of any of them. He even claimed that a particular friend was the human personification of a demon that was trying to kill him. His mental state was revealed to be extremely fragile, and he told me that he had a second personality, whom was quite literally his Slenderman character named Strider. Michael spoke frequently of this constant battle to keep Strider under the surface, because while he wasn't a bad person, he was irrevocably a major douchebag. He blamed his outbursts on this character and even texted me in italics as Strider, as if his body has been taken over for the sole purpose of belittling a 15-year-old girl over the phone. I was sympathetic as my bipolar was at its worst and my therapist was whispering the word schizoaffective to my mother when she thought I couldn't hear. For the next year and a half, he played me like a puppet, distancing me from my family and friends, convincing me that the teachers only wanted to turn me into a mindless tool for the government, and persuading and coercing me into performing sexually for him. It felt disgusting, but he promised me that he'd marry me and would have beautiful children. He was frequently abusive, but he would quickly get better, and suddenly everything would be perfect again, until it deteriorated into another explosive argument. Eventually, he convinced me to call cops on my family and report them for abuse. Now, I won't claim that my family was perfect. My dad is an alcoholic and he could get really violent, and he and I had vicious arguments. My mother mostly just supported whatever my dad did, and I was always incredibly resentful that she wouldn't defend me, even when my dad slapped me, kicked me out of the house barefoot, and was generally overly aggressive to me. But they did care, and my home was clean, warm, well stocked with food. My sisters and I never really wanted for much physically, and we often got things we wanted to. The system would have destroyed my sisters, who were pretty young at the time. When my parents found out that I'd placed a call, I panicked and ran away from home. crashing at my friend's house. Michael wanted me to stay put until he could get a friend of his from Austin to come get me. But when I turned on my phone in the morning to see the text from my family and knew that I had terrified my sisters and the police had been called, I arranged for my dad to bring me home. I wouldn't let him pick me up from my friend's house because I knew he could threaten to sue her parents for assisting me. I served 6 months of juvenile probation and had to endure several meetings with a state-appointed therapist for falsely accusing my family of abuse, and my parents were subject to a second inquiry from CPS due to me running away. By the end, we were breaking up every other week and getting back together when he would send me pictures of terrible gouges in his arms, threatening to kill himself. I actively hated him by then, but still loved him and didn't want him to die. I escaped when he discovered that I'd been talking to a male friend who he particularly hated and dumped me on Valentine's Day. It took him 2 months to realize I wasn't coming back, but he would still try to text me, and I blocked so many numbers and email accounts because he would change them just to message me. It was completely terrifying, and I was constantly terrified because he knew my address. But eventually he disappeared, and I slowly started trying to put my life back together. About a year or so ago, he texted me and I indulged with him. He claimed that he'd been married. I really doubted it. Despite the single picture that he sent, I asked what date his wedding had been on. But he couldn't tell me, and first tried to claim that it had been in December, 2 months before he dumped me. When I called him on it, he backpedaled and got defensive. I blocked him after that, satisfied that he was still a miserable mess and that he hadn't snared another poor minor. So, Michael, let's not meet. "10 years ago, I dated this guy, David. I don't talk about David much, only to my current partner and very close friends. Talking about him makes me nervous. When David and I met, I was only 17 and he was a post-secondary student in his early 20s. Being a near-homeless gay teenage dropout with raging hormones, a complicated home life, and limited dating prospects, I jumped into a relationship with him. Our relationship progressed very rapidly, and I moved into his Toronto apartment after only a month of dating. I was young and inexperienced with relationships. David was a horrible guy. Of course, in the beginning, it was great. We were in love, very much so. But after a few months, that began to change. One night, after a first minor fight over laundry, I got a glimpse of how angry he could get over a simple matter. That night, I had a dream in which he held a pillow against my face, smothering me until I asphyxiated. His facial expressions contorted in terrifying ways, morphing into the face of a demon. In hindsight, this dream was trying to tell me something. I should have trusted my instincts. 6 months into our relationship, he no longer hid these parts of himself. See, David has bipolar disorder and ignored his diagnosis. In retrospect, I can confidently say he's a sociopath as well. As a teenager, I was not equipped to deal with this. He was incredibly manipulative, eventually keeping me away from my friends and family, especially male co-workers. He stole money from me and put his bills and debts in my name without my consent. I still have horrible credit because of this. He would gaslight me on the strangest things, trying to convince me I was a horrible person. He constantly accused me of cheating, almost daily by the end. He would fly off the handle suddenly. He was often physically violent. I can't exactly remember how long I continued in this relationship. As it is a part of my life, I try hard to forget. But it was around 2 years, maybe a little more. On my first attempt to leave him, he followed me as I left during the night. I passed through a well-lit city park on my way to a friend's place. Before I knew it, I was on the ground with David on top of me, hands around my throat. Thankfully, passerby came to my aid. Don't ask me why I didn't report him for any of this. I was very confused. I really thought he was going to kill me. I didn't tell anyone about the night for years after. He attacked me once more shortly after I left him, when we bumped into each other at a party. I found out later that he had been cheating on me the entire time we were together with multiple people, including my best friend's straight boyfriend. Go figure. Fast forward a few years, I'm dating an awesome guy who I am still with today, and I am working as a charity fundraiser, collecting donations for non-profits on busy Toronto streets. I get angry or strange emails and texts from David once in a while, always changing my phone number and email address when he finds them out. I never responded. I'm informed that he moved to Montreal. I spot him a few times a year stalking me, poking his head out from behind a street corner while I'm working, through my window as he walks around my neighborhood, trying to figure out which house I live in, or around my work office building. It made me very anxious every time. Every so often, he tries to infiltrate whatever group of friends he can connect me to. I see him pop up in social media photos with friends I have recently hung out with, despite living in a different city. I don't know how he was finding out these things about my personal life. However, all of this slows down as time goes on, until a year or so passes with no sign of him, until I get an email last year saying that he wants to talk, briefly about things that happened in our relationship, and I wonder if he wants to apologize. I don't respond, but I message a mutual friend whom I trust to find out how he is doing. My friend warns me that he still obsesses about me often and that his mental health has declined, and they are no longer close friends because of it. He advises me never to speak to him again for both our sake. Out of morbid curiosity and maybe a touch of emotional masochism, I set up a fake Facebook account and creep his profile, sending me into a rabbit hole of links to his Tumblr and beyond. He is an artist now. I found a post with photos of one of his latest works, the creepiest fucking zine I've ever seen. It depicted an extremely bloody scenario and a poem. I don't remember the poem exactly, but it was something about gruesomely murdering a boy who didn't love him back, describing the death in detail, and contending that he deserved it. I'm more than a little uneasy at this point. I'm actually scared. 80 years is more than enough time to get over your ex. This was obsession, to an alarming level. I changed my email once more and asked a mutual friend to keep me updated if he ever decides to take a trip to my city. I also deleted my Facebook and most of my social media accounts, and I haven't seen any sign of him in over a year. I'm 25 now. I have worked through a lot of the issues that David left inside of me. Now I have a really kick-ass partner and a squishy cat. I'm a university student and my life has been pretty rad. Still, I'm always expecting to get an email or to see him down the street. I sometimes wonder if this is over or if anything will change when he tracks me down again. Maybe he is simply biding his time. So, yeah, let's not meet stalker ex-boyfriend David ever again. And if you ever read this, consider it my closure on a trash relationship and get some help. I stumbled across this website a few days ago, and it seems like the only place where I can get an answer to what's been happening at my house the last few days. I am a 31-year-old single father. My wife died about 3 years ago. A drunk driver had torn across the median and slammed into her. My daughter is 4 years old and named Jacqueline, Jackie for short. I work as a carpenter for a company that builds custom furniture, and I make a little extra money by doing other custom jobs at home. For the sake of privacy, I'm leaving the company's name out of it. I love my daughter more than anything in the world. I want to give her the life I'd never had. Right now, I am working on a custom cabinet that looks like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. I'm getting paid a lot of money, but it's a very complicated job. The buyer wants it to be life-sized, fairly detailed, and to have a heavy deadbolt lock. I have at least another week left of work before I get paid. Right now, I'm counting my pennies. This story begins last week. I decided to stop at a bar on Main Street. Jackie was at a friend's house for a sleepover, so I figured I can take some time out for myself and have a beer or two. After I finished off my third one, I looked at my watch and saw it was 11 at night. I decided to pay my tab and call it a night. I was making my way down the street when I decided to cut down an alley towards the garage I parked my truck. I was walking by some garbage cans when something caught my eye. A doll was propped up against the wall to the side of one of the plastic bins. I picked it up to give it a look over. The doll's face was a little dirty and the clothes were torn up. The makeup was heavy and smeared like it had spent a day or two in the rain. I figured if this sewed up the clothes and cleaned it up a bit, it would be a nice gift for Jackie. So I brought the doll back to my truck and went home. I went into my workshop and cleaned off the smudged paint before sewing a simple dress out of a scrap cloth. I put the new clothes on the doll and waited until Jackie got home. The next morning, Jackie came home and her eyes lit up when I gave her the new toy. She took the doll, she decided to name her Marie, into the workshop with me. She was clearly excited and talked at a mile a minute. She kept asking me about what I could and couldn't make for the doll. The rest of the Sunday was spent with me working and her playing with Marie. Around 8, it was bedtime for Jackie. I followed her to her room, put Marie on the bed next to her and read her a bedtime story. I went back outside to keep working. That's when the first weird thing happened. I was in my shop until maybe midnight before I called it a night. There, on the living room floor, was Marie, leaning up against the couch and staring right at me. I picked her up and brought her to Jackie's room, too tired to give it a second thought. I went to bed and woke up early to bring Jackie to school. She was disappointed that she couldn't bring her new friend to preschool, but I told her there were rules she had to follow. Before I drove her to school, I helped Jackie take Marie up to her room and put her to bed. I brought Jacqueline to school, and when I came back home to grab my tools, I heard a loud banging coming from her room. I grabbed a butcher's knife from the kitchen and went upstairs, thinking someone had broken in. I made my way upstairs with my heart pounding in my ears. My left hand grabbed the door handle and threw it open. There, on the ground, was Marie, staring right up at me with her marble blue eyes. Then she made a noise. I swear to fucking God, she made a noise. Out of instinct, I raised the cleaner over my head. That's when the noise stopped. Marie just laid on the carpet, staring at me. I slammed the door shut and ran down to the kitchen. I picked up the phone, but stopped before I started to dial. I figured I was just losing it. This job had gotten to me too much. If I fucked it up, I'd lose my next 3 months of bill payments. It had to be stress, right? I thought. I took a deep breath, grabbed my keys, and went to work. I came home a little before Jackie did. I sat in the living room, half afraid of going upstairs, with a firm knowledge it was a lack of sleep. Jackie came home while I was making sketches of the locking system of the cabinet. She came home, hugged me, and I made her a snack. As soon as she finished, she ran upstairs to play with Marie as I sat downstairs and finished my sketches. I half expected a scream to come from Jackie's room. If I told Jackie about what had happened that morning, she would never sleep again. If I got rid of Marie, Jackie would never forgive me, since I thought at the time it was just my imagination. I let her play with the doll. Nothing happened the rest of the day. I went out of my workshop and did my work without interruption until Jackie came outside with Marie in tow. She started to play catch with her on my shop floor. Eventually, she looked up at me and asked, "Daddy, when are you making Marie's new clothes?" "Soon, honey. I responded. "Marie isn't happy, Daddy." The hammer I was holding dropped. "How do you know?" My daughter sat with Marie leaned against the wall opposite her. Jackie rolled the ball towards the door. "Marie is sad. I think if she had prettier clothes, she wouldn't be though," she said with a smile. I picked the hammer back up and looked at the door. "How do you know that?" Jackie retrieved her ball and rolled it back to Marie. "She told me. She is a princess. She needs to wear the best clothes. How else will be her family recognize her?" I went back to work with a chuckle. I will get on that, first thing. I nearly crushed my daughter's doll out of paranoia. I was jumpy. Marie was sad? That's just my kid's imagination. I shrugged it off and went back to work. That night, I laid awake. The school was closed the next day, and I had taken the day off. I was looking forward to spending the day with my daughter, but at that moment, I just couldn't fall asleep. I got up, figuring if I wasn't going to sleep, I might as well get started on Marie's new clothes. I had plenty of scrap fabric laying around, and by 3 in the morning, I had the rough draft of a new jacket and dress. I started heading to bed, thinking I would get a few hours of sleep before I had to wake up and cook breakfast. This next part might seem crazy. I heard the heavy breathing of Jackie sleeping, so I know it wasn't her. But coming from her room, I heard a weird sound. It was like muffled sobbing. I drifted off before I could think too much about it. The next day, I was sitting on the couch while Jackie was playing with Marie in her room. That's when I heard the scream. I ran upstairs and saw Jackie crying and holding her finger. "Marie bit me," she screamed as she ran into my arms. I looked at the doll and saw a trickle of blood running from the corner of her mouth. I told Jackie to leave the room. She stepped outside and I slammed the door shut. It was just me and Marie. "Please," she said, "I just want to go home." I grabbed the sock off the ground and shoved it back into her mouth before tying a belt around her head. I made sure the ropes were going to keep her put before I picked her up. I put her in Jackie's closet on top of the clothes I had found her in, a short black skirt and a black t-shirt with princess written in black Gothic type. I had to stop myself from kicking Marie in her side so she'd stop crying. No matter what I did, I didn't want to break my daughter's toy. Now, here I am, writing this. Jackie's at the neighbors and I'm seriously freaked out. Help me, what do? I can't call anyone. I just turned on the news and there was a story about the police looking for the missing doll. Something about it going missing after a night out with friends. I hate it here. Granted, I deserve it. I'm currently locked down behind massive concrete walls and solid steel doors in a maximum security penitentiary. I was locked up, which feels like a lifetime ago now. I earned it. I did it. Even second I wrote here in justice. But that doesn't change the fact that I hate it. It is cold here. I have a single concrete court and toilet. My clothes itch and are too thin to keep any chills out. The walls are grey with a slicky green tint due to the door, swamp-like tile that sends a rosy colored glow into the room, reflecting the buzzing fluorescent light above me. The door is thick and unmoving. They painted the same shade of slicky green as the floor. I assumed it is lead based to save on cost. Maybe, if I lick it enough times, maybe I can kill enough brain cells to forget I'm here. I have no roommate, as many who don't, who are perceived as extreme risks. Thankfully, I can still have time outside and shower without being entirely supervised. More than I can say for many in here. My only commodity is my toilet paper and my journal. I earned the journal though, much work and good behavior. The pencil I write with is dull and has no eraser, like that a golfer would use to keep scorecards. I am allowed 4 hours per day with it, between breakfast and lunch. I receive the journal and pencil with my meal and return it kind. If the pencil has any pieces missing, or there are any extensive tears in the pages, then I will lose it for the following day. I comply, so I may have some mild comfort in this concrete cage, in which I slowly die. Again, I definitely earned it, but that doesn't change the fact that prison is hell. I earned my place here because I killed people. I killed many people. I killed 20 people to be exact. This is the first time I've actually written it. I beat the cannibal's murder, which for some reason gave me a sense of accomplishment. However, what gave me more satisfaction was the evenness of the number 20. 2, 0. 20, 20, 2, 0, 2, 0, 20. Even and smooth. My compulsion made it this way. 21 would have made getting arrested a living hell. 15 would have been okay, but 20 was much cleaner. Increments of 5, always increments of 5. Sometimes, during a shopping trip, I would grab a stick of gun so as to have 20 or 10 or 30 items even. However, in the case of the killings, it was much more intense. The problem was the itch I felt in between. My mind was in pain from 1 to 4 and 6 to 9. The itch was not as bad during 5s, but 10s were the best. However, the number will eventually attract attention. That number is partially what got me caught, but I had to scratch the itch, so to speak. It made me empathize with vampires in the old horror stories, the sensation of aching thirst. It is nightmarish. The same remained true for my age, 40. I finished at 40, which made me content. I hated not having an even age. I could force down the bad feelings my age ended in 5s or even numbers, but I always had bad years with 1s, 3s, 7s, and 9s. I understand it is an abnormal behavior, but it's a compulsion. I have it manageable, so the most would never notice in a day-to-day routine. I have to reminisce on these pages because I have no way of going back. It started many years ago, and the urge only grew from there. The first time I killed was interesting. I should have felt the need to immediately kill again, as I did in later years, but I didn't. They say mental illness worsens with age. I guess that's what kept me from acting again so soon, but I'm not sure. The first time I killed was pretty lackluster. I was walking home from school through the woods, where very few kids were bold enough to cross. While walking, I stumbled upon a man. He was clearly injured, and even at the age of 12, I knew he had little time left. He sat holding his side. He didn't see me yet. From my vantage point, I could see a long, white bone jutting from his leg, which tells me the pain from what his ribs were doing was worse than that of a broken leg. That, or he was just in shock. Far above this section of woods was a road, and from what I could see, a vehicle burst through railing. The wrecked vehicle was a truck, lay decimated some 40 feet below the road, in the brush and rocks. I remember this truck. Either way, the driver had pulled himself from the wreckage and crawled in agony upwards of 50 feet to the nearest tree, where his strength was slowly failing him. I remember seeing a large shard of metal which had been ripped from the side of the truck, and picking it up. I walked slowly to the man, who reached pitifully towards me for help. I slowly shoved the sharp edge of the metal into the man's throat and watched as blood began to sprout from the wound in his mouth. He gargled like a drowning cow on his own blood, and after a time he ceased all movement forever. It was a rush of which I cannot explain. The excitement of ending a human life is next to none. I was content for a fleeting moment. I stared at the body for some time before taking a bloody shred of his pant leg that was hanging by a thread. I just wanted to have a keepsake. That was my first kill. I was never caught, nor even suspected. Growing up in the mountains of the south allowed much privacy, and it allowed me to get away with murder. As time grew, so did that feeling of power and accomplishment. I felt like God. No one even knew I was the way I was. I would never be a suspect because I knew to hide. From the time I was a boy, I knew how to blend in. Sometimes it was a challenge because of my appearance, but I learned a simple skill: how to hide in plain sight. I was able to work hard in the background. I made good grades and maintained very well close friendships throughout school, so no one would discover anything about me. However, I made sure everyone had a nice thing to say about me. Carrying groceries, helping kids with studying, always using manners. I graduated in the upper ranks of my class and school attended the local college. After I earned a degree in business, I worked hard where I could and raised enough money to buy my own rig. I worked by riding the highways as a trucker for years and eventually bought 2 more rigs. By 35, I was a respectable business owner in my old town with a dispatch and a few drivers. I obviously still drove, even as the owner, because it kept me close to my only real passion. I hid well in plain sight because white people love a nigger. In a town of 90% white and 10% other, I learned to blend despite being a minority. Learn to talk like them, learn to walk like them, and you can manipulate them into whatever you want. I hate them. Not white people, all people. My mother died shortly after I graduated high school from heart failure, and I felt liberated, for I held her opinion highly. Her opinions often kept me in line and respectable. When she died, I was free to pursue my own interests. My father, while a good man in his own right, never held much weight in my actions, so I walked the path I chose for myself, despite what his feelings may be. Either way, I dwindled for some time after the first murder. The urge slowly grew. By high school, I kept my eyes peeling for another opportunity to snuff out a life. Finally, that day came. The second time I murdered was equally uninspiring. I found myself at a graduation party and the whole senior class was drinking heavily. All except me. We were at the home of a wealthier student who had maintained a spotless record through both junior high and high school and wanted to go out in a way where she could get out of her box. I learned 2 things that evening. The first, that a well-mannered, well-educated young lady was no different than anyone else in regards to having a darker side. She wanted to be remembered for a party, not her good grades, not her generous deeds, not her modest manner of dress, but a party. Everyone has a dark side in some way. This was the first thing I learned. The second was that if anyone is drunk and dancing on the roof, you could bump a certain young lady discreetly enough to send her 3 stories down into the concrete and make it look like an accident. She landed with a smug that can only be replicated in my dreams. This was the first time I was aroused by a killing. I'm not sure why. Her deep brown hair flowed past her shoulders, and the look of utter confusion and terror in the face of innocence was priceless. Blood pooled from her head and seeped into the nearby swimming pool. I fancied her, you could say, but only because she represented something that does not exist: human innocence. When her skull cracked against the pavement, I was instantly excited. I had to sneak away to handle it and steal a memento from the girl's room. The chaos I caused that night again resurfaced my deep sense of accomplishment that only comes from death. This was the second time I killed, 18 years of age. I had always enjoyed lifting weights and working towards my overall health. A fat predator is a bad predator. I maintained this level of fitness for most of my adult life. I had to, in order to pursue my passion. Of course, things would have a way of catching up with me I was incarcerated with an unfortunate mountain of evidence. I won't say I covered every base perfectly to ensure not getting caught, but I felt like I was careful enough. I guess not in hindsight. I remember the day I was arrested. I had turned 40 the month prior and was on the road delivering a shipment of plywood. I was behind the wheel of my rig in rural Alabama. I was taking a back road because I enjoy the scenery, and when you're the boss, you can set your own schedule. At this point, I had killed 19 people, and the itch was present. I would have to rub the back of my neck when I thought about it. It needed to be scratched. It needed to take care of it. That's when I saw her. Miles from any structure or any living person was a broken down baby blue Volkswagen Beetle. The emergency lights were flashing. The height of my truck allowed me to scan both her car and the area surrounding us. It was tall, uncut grass and trees, covered in utter blackness due to the overcast night. There was no one for miles and miles. We would be alone together. I pulled in behind her, with my low lights so as to not scare her. When I stepped out of the truck, I addressed her. I have worked on my speaking voice for years in order to betray their security into my house. Are you all right? She stepped out from behind her hood and I saw her in better sight. She was a young Hispanic woman. She was silky, dark hair to her shoulders and black librarian glasses. She was pretty, which was a bonus for me. Consider it like a dinner. I also knew she could complete the cycle. She could be the 20th and I could rest. Best yet, she was petite. I think the engine is shot, she said in a depression. That these dark woods certainly played well into. She just wanted to get out of danger, little did she know. I can give you a ride. I own this company, so I can make the time. I didn't want to sound presumptuous, but I knew by making myself a manager, it would remove the creepy truck driver mentality. I don't know. I promise. I'll take you straight into town and we can find you a phone. Okay, she said, with her fear betraying her skepticism. Thank you. I'll get the door for you. As she walked to the passenger side, I held the door open for her. As she took her first step, I grabbed her ankle and pulled her straight down with as much force as I could manage. Her jaw connected with the stumbled metal stairs. Full force. I know some teeth were broken by the crunch that emanated from the skull. She fell limp to the dirt as I lifted her onto my shoulder. She didn't stare long enough for me to grab a large socket wrench from my rig. I could feel the warm blood from her mouth pouring down my shoulder. I carried her into the tall grass, just out of sight. We made love then. I made love before to some, but this was special. She was the 20th. She would complete the need. Halfway through, she began to wake and struggle. From there, I had to act. I took the socket wrench and began to hit her. She struggled to scream. I hit her in her pretty face. Over and over, over and over. When I had finished on all fronts, I took her wallet from her jeans. Hannah, I believe her name was. I took her glasses as they fell off, when her face collided with my truck and avoided the wrath of the socket wrench. They had her name engraved inside the temple. I drove, leaving the scene entirely. I had to re-enter the highway some time later, and saw lights in my mirror. I had been stopped before, once even with a boat in the back, so I was not worried. The officer walked to the side and called me out. You Williams? Yes, sir, I answered coolly, holding my ID and paperwork for the truck and delivery. He then spoke into his radio. Yep, we found him. Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. Why? I demanded. I was not about to be cuffed and restrained for no good reason. He then turned me violently to my truck and slapped cuffs around my wrists, from where he sat me on the pavement and called for backup. When other officers arrived, one finally noticed the blood on my back. They then found the glasses. They had stopped me initially because one of my drivers was caught with a brick of marijuana I was brought down on a technicality. My run lasted from 12 to 40. I was undetected for that entire time. I killed strangers only. I was so careful. A technicality was the only thing that could have done this. My simple home was turned about until they found my treasure box, a shoebox of souvenirs. From there, it was easy to put me at every single murder. Every homeless person stabbed to death in cities. Every prostitute with their heads missing. Every unsupervised child in crowded streets. I was linked to all of them. Now, one may ask, why would you be so stupid as to keep all these things? To that, I would say I had to. It was my passion and the only thing that gave me meaning. I had to keep something around. They were the only memories I could have of those times. Like I first wrote, I deserve to be in prison, but I don't regret in the slightest what I've done. The trial was grueling and irritating. Since I killed across state lines, there was arguments as to where to have my trial, but it became a federal issue, which only meant, my lawyer explained, many of the killings would be circumstantial at best, but just as many have my now connected DNA, and they are going to be nearly impossible to deny. I decided to throw in the towel. The media was out for blood, the public was out for blood, and the jury was out for blood. I had my fill, so now it was time to pay the favor forward. There was no way to avoid a life sentence. Despite the difficulties of fighting some evidence of murders, I was still convicted for 18 of the 20. However, I was punished for them all. The day of sentencing, I stood still before the judge. The judge looked down at me and rumbled on about my cruelties. I stood with the thought that the death penalty was illegal in the state. It was utterly satisfying to know. I snapped out of it when he got to the sentence. Seeing as how the death penalty is illegal in this state, I can only do the most. I sentence you to 1,001 life sentences. He was being melodramatic. Not in history had there been such an absurd sentence. What's worse, the number was uneven. My demeanor slightly shaken, I asked the judge, "Why 1,001? The courtroom was silent. The families, friends, and jury looked at me with contempt. But that didn't matter then, even less now. The judge leaned over his podium. He smiled. It still boils my blood, and he calmly replied, "To torment you. That's how I got where I am now. I don't interact with the other inmates of the guards. I just mind my business as best as I can. I don't like to think about my sentence because it makes me itch. Similar to when you haven't paid a certain bill but don't have the funds. It's a wincing, mental discomfort. I write the rest of this in a testament to what happened yesterday, in hopes it reaches someone on the outside. My day started normally. A loud bell rang, and I stood to my feet. From there, my door opened, and I walked to the shower facility. I tried to find myself at the end of the line, so as to get the most time out of my cell. I also like my privacy. My fellow black inmates gave me hell for being crazy, since the African American killers are considered such an abnormality. I entered the showers normal, but I felt a sense of dread that I don't know how to describe. I just felt unpleasant. I felt watched and alone at the same time. I felt completely hopeless and near despair. I quickly finished my shower and left the facility. The halls were quiet, and the stationary guard was not at his post in front of my cell. I was alone in this hallway. Suddenly, I felt a large hand grip my shoulder and order me forward. The next thing I knew, I was being escorted to the warden's office. I walked the tight and closed halls until I reached the last room on the right. Inside was totally dark apart from a dim lamp illuminating a desk. The hand shoved me in and slammed the door behind me. I saw the silhouette of Warden and he beckoned me to sit. I sat across from him in uncomfortable silence. He didn't move and neither did I. I would force him to make the first move. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke up. "Let's go over your file." I did not respond. He gave no indication as to why. Count 1. Confessed. Not convicted. Man falls off cliff and you assess him in passing. You were 12, so it wasn't included in your final file. Count 2. Confessed. Convicted. You confessed to shoving a young woman off a roof and then robbing her. You were 18. Count 3. Confessed. Convicted. Homeless man near your college. You stabbed him and cut out a tooth. You were 20. Count 4. Confessed. Not convicted. You claim to have shot a prostitute in Texas. The souvenir you took could not link you to the crime, and she had no family. You were 24. Not convicted, but you know what you did. Counts 5 through 9. Confessed. Convicted on all counts. They were all strangled, and you kept a lock of hair. Left them on the highway. Count 10. Convicted. You took a lost 12-year-old and drowned him. You were doing well in life by this point, but murder still called, didn't it? Count 11. Confessed. Convicted. Ha! This one was special, wasn't she? That gas station employee who you stalked for a while. Followed her home and broke in. Took your time and did it right. She broke your perfect streak, and you were going to make her pay, right? Kept her locket as a token of your affection. Count 12. Convicted. You took a young man to you from a local club in Missouri, strangled him the moment the door was closed, chopped him up and kept his teeth. Count 13 through 17. Confessed. Convicted on all counts. The hitchhiker phase. Here it seems you just wanted to close the gap. You got sloppy, left a lot of evidence behind. Count 18. Confessed. Convicted. You killed a housewife in Florida. You were on vacation at the time. You spotted her and just had to do something, waiting until her husband left and had yourself a time. Another rape and strangling. You took her blood-soaked necklace. Count 19. Confessed. Convicted. You saw a jogger one morning and followed in your truck. When you knew their routine, you waited in the bushes until he passed. You killed him with a hammer and took one of his shoes. Count 20. Confessed. Convicted. The one that brought you down. You couldn't resist her. You were too careless, too excited. Now you're here. You took her glasses and bashing her head in and assaulting her. Do you know what they call you? He completely bastardized my work. I had done so much and he swept over it like nothing. I glared at him in the dark before answering. The scavenger hunt killer? I hated that name. They gave me that name because my murders spanned so far and I collected odd items. Again, my works and efforts were reduced to a joke. It still makes me sick. The warden spoke up again. Are you sorry? I sat for a moment before responding. Would it matter? He chuckled in a deep-throaty laugh. No, he said, settling in. I guess it wouldn't. He continued. I don't get it really. You're a highly intelligent, healthy and well-spoken man. Why on earth would you throw that away? I sat in angry silence. I refused to give this man the satisfaction of an answer. Do you believe in God? The warden asked. I chewed my tongue before responding. No. Pity, he responded. As if my response didn't really matter. That would make what I'm about to tell you much better. I waited for him to continue. Your sentence is being commuted. I raised an elbow in disbelief. Really? Yes, he sat, still shadowed, but I knew he was smirking. What does that have to do with God? I know I should have had much more important questions to ask him in that moment, but I was curious. I assumed he meant I should be thankful. Well, he said, his voice trailing, that would make this next part easier. You passed away this morning, son." Before I could respond, his hand tossed a few photos in front of me. It was me. I lay covered in blood on the shower floor. I had been stabbed from the looks of it. Yeah, the warden, or who I thought was the warden, spoke up. Some fella wanted to prove his might by stabbing a serial killer to death in the shower. Didn't work though, since he was caught and will most likely be in solitary, if that's some comfort. I stared at him. I stared at the photographs. I simply could not accept it. This is absurd. I felt insulted. I know it seems odd, but hear me out. He sat upright, ready to make his case. Do you know what the Universalists are? No. Well, he continued without missing a beat. Basically, it states that everyone gets into heaven, even if you aren't necessarily in their denomination. This is heaven? I was ready to laugh. This was a joke. No. See, that's the bad news, he continued. See, everyone does eventually move on, but before anyone can move on, they must resolve all the obligations that they have on earth, and judgments. Before I could remark, he caught his breath and explained further. You died this morning. You served one of your 1001 life sentences. Welcome to number 2. I stood up. This isn't funny. I'm leaving. I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, unable to use my body. Please, I heard the warden, though his voice was now much deeper, sinking my gut. Sit. I returned to my seat with a sensation that was new to me. Fear. Now, he continued, his voice returned to normal. You are not dead. You just started another sentence. Everything will be back to normal when you leave. When I dismiss you, you will leave here and return to your bank. Do you understand? I nodded, still stunned by what I then knew as truth, the unexplained dread I felt that morning. I walked out of the warden's office that day, feeling a hopelessness I have never known. The prison was the same, but it wasn't. It was lonelier, darker. That feels like forever ago. I learned since then. First, lifetime, from the age you are incarcerated. I accepted a 40-year-old life sentence, but after speaking with a few other inmates, serving like myself, I learned that it varies somewhere from 80 to 112 years. It varies, but it is always at least 80. I guess the guards don't notice after a certain point. Also, I assume they don't register that we never seem to leave. Inexplicable, but that was happening. Second, each go-around changes you. The prisoners don't notice you. The others like you have fewer words. The guards seemed always outside of the line of sight. They were like fleeting shadows. I am cracking mentally. I will walk into the showers and see someone shaving, even speak with him at length. However, when I turn a corner or close a stall door, he'll be gone when I return. Next, I learned that suicide doesn't work. I learned the same way every inmate here, like me, does. I swallowed bleach and had a miserable stomachache, but no death. I hung myself, where I was fully conscious, for 8 straight hours until a guard found me while bringing my breakfast the following morning. I learned that being murdered, but murdering adds it. So no one on life row attempts murder here. Finally, escaping isn't an option. We have runners sometimes. Men who just finished their first sentence. The guy just snapped. He just panicked and ran. The snipers didn't even turn. He grabbed the fence and immediately fell to the ground, from where he shook violently. He died right there of a heart attack. I saw him a week later, 3rd life sentence, half crippled. I guess we get punished if we try to leave. I don't know if this is permanent. He was a wreck upon returning. It reminded me of my cats in my neighborhood as a boy. The first time you heard it, the animal twitches and becomes neurotic. But given enough time, it accepts its fate. Either way, we are forced to remain. forced to leave until we pay our dues, never truly dying. I don't even know if time is the same now, but if you're reading this, I managed to successfully get these pages out. I have a handful of plans, which I cannot record. I'm leaving this journal for anyone who's a criminal or wants to become one, but I do wish I knew then what I know now. This is simply a warning. 100,000 years of mopping floors or scrambling toilets. 100,000 years on a concrete slab, a hard, unforgiving surface. 100,000 years with 1 hour a day in a dying earthscape I barely recognize. 1,001 life sentences, 1,000 to go. Only one small thing gives me comfort. With 1,000 life sentences, at least, it's a nice and a clean number. I hope I don't die too soon and ruin this nice, even lifetime, because the next one will be hell. My husband works the night shift. He has for years. At first, it was hard to get used to sleeping alone, but as our own son started growing, I learned to appreciate it. Now that I am nearing my 7th month of pregnancy with our second child, all of the extra space in the bed has become a godsend. Before, it wasn't unheard of for Connor to crawl into bed with me every now and then after a late-night trip to the bathroom, but lately, waking up with him snuggled up to my back has become an almost nightly occurrence. At 5 years old, Connor has recently found himself in the inevitable "there's a monster in my closet" phase. It started out as a few scattered nightmares. I would wake up to the sound of him crying for me from his room. When this happened, I would sit on the floor beside his bed, smooth his curly hair back from his sweet little face, and make the soothing sounds every mother masters during the newborn phase, until he calmed enough to fall back asleep. Eventually, he would need me to open the closet door and examine it, before accepting my reassurances that there was no monster and that it was just another bad dream. When asked about it during daylight hours, he would talk about the scary boy who lived in his closet. The boy in the closet would watch him at night and whisper Connor's name for him to come out and play, and would laugh every time Connor whimpered or cried out for me. One day, I looked down at a picture Connor was drawing and broke out in goosebumps. He was drawing a little boy. The boy in this drawing had pale blue skin and dark blue hair. Its eyes were nearly solid black, except for the crimson irises. Its mouth took up the entire bottom half of the drawing face. Connor had never given his drawings teeth before, but this one had a mouth full of long pointed teeth. "That is quite a picture, Buddy," I told him. "Who is that?" His answer unsettled me more than I cared to admit. "That's the scary boy that lives in my closet. He says that his name is Connor now too, and he says that someday I'll have to go live in the closet and he will come out and live here, and then you'll be his mommy." The next day, while I was out running errands, I ran into the specialty Christian store across town and bought a nice wooden crucifix, complete with a little metal Jesus. Later that afternoon, while Connor was in the living room distracted by his favorite cartoon and a snack, I snuck into his room and hung the crucifix on the back wall of his closet, behind his clothes. That was about a week and a half ago. Since then, I haven't heard a peep about the boy in the closet, and Connor has been once again sleeping soundly. That is until tonight. Tonight, I was woken up by a small hand nudging my shoulder. I opened my eyes and saw my little boy's sweet face. "Mommy, I'm scared. The scary boy from the closet is back." And that was the moment my mind shook off the dregs of sleep. My eyes widened in terror, and my next thought chilled me to the bone. If my son was standing in front of me at the side of the bed, then who or what was laying in the bed with me, snuggled up to my back? My uncle's house feels so empty since the disappearance. I can't explain it, but walking through those dusty, quiet rooms, I knew right away he'd never be coming back. My own nerves were shot. It was left to us, cousins, to shift through the remains of their lives, to pack his memory in cardboard boxes, bound for some storage unit off the interstate. I was going through the closet in the master bedroom of their 2-story suburban house this morning when I found my uncle's diary. The bulb was blown in there, the cloudy sky so dim I almost missed it, but there it was, a leather-bound book beneath a loaded shotgun and a massive pile of my aunt's shoes. I felt a need to share the lost things he wrote. July 24th. There is a boy in my garden. I noticed him for this first time when I sat down for coffee. He was less than a shadow at first. I only notice him when I'm looking at something else, like my reheated frozen egg sandwich or the newspaper. But the more I tried to look away, the stronger his presence felt. A long spreading shadow. No child looks stretched out like that. No child has such long strangle fingers or twisted feet. God, I must be going crazy. The uncle I remember would never write this way. He was the kind of guy who always had something smart to say about my nose ring, the kind of guy who would get drunk with his brothers and knock over a bowl of tortilla chips, roll on the carpet laughing, and not clear up afterwards. He wasn't the sort of person who would think like this, unless it was something he saw with his own eyes. I kept reading. July 26th. He was there again, after work. Every day he gets a little closer. I swore I thought I heard him say something as I rushed from the car to the front door. I won't look behind me anymore. I won't even look at the window. I walk by at night and hear the rustling of the trees out the boulevard. It's mixed in with his voice. My wife, bless her heart, hasn't noticed a thing. Not that she would. It's been years since we really talked about anything. My daughter just rolls her eyes as usual. Life goes on as normal, and yet he's there. July 31st. God, what does he want? 3 nights I haven't sleep. That awful tap on the windows. Got all of them. Dusk till dawn. I was angry at first. I wanted to open the blinds, but I felt the scream start building up inside before I even got close. Freakish tall, he must be, to tap on the upstairs windows like that. He must have an overlarge head, like a baby's, and eyes the size of dinner plates to watch me wander from room to room. Wife asked me what I was doing last night with the light on in the office. Told her I was reading the Bible, and I did. But the tapping, God, the tapping didn't stop. It goes on like this for a while, rambling. He talks about how your life can go off the rails, and as long as you're going through the motions, nobody notices. He talks about feeling like a ghost in his own house. August 3rd. Took the last 2 days off. Told the family I was sick. Wife brought me some chicken noodle soup in a mug, then ran off to whatever she does during the day. I didn't like that backward glance she gave me as she shut the bedroom door, like I was some kind of freak. I am not a monster. Daughter noticed nothing, of course, too busy with those future meth heads she calls friends. I can hear her. Christ, what time is it? She came in all right. Yelled at me to mind my own business when I picked down the stairs. Slammed the door. Slammed it so hard it flew back open. And the shadow leaked in like oil. I didn't want to see what it looked like. Didn't try to protect my family. I just ran to the damn closet. It's funny in a way. Hilarious, actually. Do they even notice? They don't notice anything. They didn't notice the drinking. Hell, maybe I even lost control on purpose. Just to see if they'd care. I lost control too many times. That's why I had to get out of the house. It wasn't my fault. What was a kid doing in the street at 12:30 at night? And what was I supposed to do? Let one little car accident ruin my whole life? I'm an office manager, for Christ's sake. I have a wife and a kid who would confess to something no one saw, and for what? Just to spend life in prison? Fine, I did it. I pulled what was left of him off of my front bumper, wrapped him up in the trunk, and then dumped him in the woods on the other side of town. Hit a deer, that's what I told the mechanic. Life goes on. He is here now, not standing in the yard, not tapping on the window. In the house, I heard him coming up the stairs. He took his time with it, like he knew I was listening. Hiding in the closet, like we're playing hide and seek. The wife and kid? Maybe they can't see him. Maybe they're all monsters. I don't know. The bedroom door is opening. I can hear those fingers I never got around to greasing. At least I've got the gun. God, the tapping again. It's harder now. Long fingers breaking through the door. That's where it ends. Did my uncle go crazy? Did he really kill a kid? I don't know what to think anymore. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all in my next video.